بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين والعاقبة للمتقين والجنة للموحدين ولا عدوان إلا على الظالمين، والصلاة والسلام على أشرف الخلق والمرسلين سيدنا ونبينا ومولانا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله تعالى وبركاته. All praise belongs to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and the choicest of blessings and salutations upon our Master Sayyidina Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. Alhamdulillah, we covered our introduction last week. We spoke of the importance of fiqh. We spoke of the importance of the Sharia. The reason why Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala sent Anbiya alayhi salatu wa salam to this world, prophets, all of them. And then the last and the final messenger was the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. We also spoke of the comprehensive nature of the Sharia. And how the Sharia covers every aspect of our life. Nothing is left to our imagination. Even the way we use the language. And when a group of Jews mocked at Sayyidina Salman al-Farisi radiallahu ta'ala, he showed them that the fact that Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam taught us even how to use the lavatory was a source of pride. Allah and His Rasul left nothing untouched, unclear to our imagination. They gave us guidance how we should live every aspect of our life. And that should be a source of pride for all of us. Alhamdulillah ala ni'mati Islam. All praise to Allah and thanks for the favor of Islam. I was listening to a clip of one of the scholars in North America, the United States, Shaykh Yahya, and he was conveying to the students that were with him how much difficulty the Habib sallallahu alaihi wasallam had to go through in order for you and I to be Muslim. And after him, sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, how the companions had to go through difficulty. And then the tabi'in. And then he said, and then the pioneers in the city that they're staying, and similarly the pioneers within our city. The karamat as we know them, the maqamat of the salihin within our community. And then the imams and the shuyukh and the scholars, so that we can have Islam on a silver platter. And he said something, the meaning of which is, he said, you don't know what is kufr, disbelief, and what it is not to believe in Allah. This is a great favor. This is a great favor. One of the regular musallis used to be regular in the masjid, but moved out to the community. Dr. Ibrahim, one Ramadan, was relating to us. And this really tells us the greatness of calling out to Allah, speaking to Allah, the favor of Islam, how Allah guides whom He wishes. So during our Ihtikaf program, we spoke here 1 year. And he said that because he became Muslim, and he said that there was a time when he was just going through medical school or completed his medical studies, that he was in search of the truth. And he left whatever religion he was following. I think it was Christianity, and he adopted the belief, as many scientists believe, that there is no God. And he said that in that state of not believing in God, he had no purpose in life. So his evenings would be spent in pubs, drinking alcohol, right? And he would be drunk in the evenings. And he said that he found himself like that almost every night, coming home to his flat in a state of drunkenness, laying down on his bed, feeling like there's no purpose in existence. And he would speak to Allah. And he would say, God, I don't believe that you exist. He was an atheist. But if you do, then please guide me to the truth. I don't believe you exist, but if you do, please guide me to the truth. And he shared this with us while he was crying. And he said, today Allah guided me to Islam. Guided me to Islam. And the point he was making in his presentation that evening was that if Allah was able to listen to the prayer of someone that did not even believe in him, and the premise of his dua was that if you exist, then guide me, and Allah accepted and heard, then what about the believer when a believer calls out to Allah? And a believer speaks to Allah. And therefore Allah said, وَأَقْرَبْ إِلَيْكُم مِّنْ حَبْلِ الْوَرِيدِ. He's closer to you than your jugular vein. And he said that يَسْتَجِيبُ إِذَا دَعَى. When people call him, subhanahu wa ta'ala, Allah responds. So may Allah guide us. Allah establish us upon deen. Allah make us true Muslims. Ameen ya Rabbil Alameen. Then we discussed the arkan of deen. And we say that the arkan of deen are three. Who remembers the arkan of deen? Islam, Iman, and Ihsan. See, the Shaykh got it right. It just.
I don't know. Maybe I have to find it moving.
I'm missing Imam Shafi to change it. That troubles me as well. It troubles me a lot. So, Iman is Islam, Iman, and Ihsan. Or Iman, sorry, Iman, Islam, and Ihsan. Those are the foundations of deen, the arkan of deen. Iman relates to your aqidah. Islam relates to your outer actions. And Ihsan relates to your relationship with Allah, the state of the heart, the purification of the heart. And we'll come to discuss all of this in more detail, starting from today, inshallah. So, author, rahimahullah ta'ala, he begins his book, Habib Ahmad bin Zayn al-Habshi. And he was one of the great scholars of the valley of Hadramaut. He lived in a city, Hawta, that today by car takes approximately 40 minutes, 40 to 45 minutes from his hometown to the city of Tarim, where his teacher Imam Haddad lived. Think about this, right? 45 minutes by car. And that's in the driving. He used to walk every day to Imam Haddad. Every day, for years. And he studied hundreds of books under Imam al-Haddad. This Habib Ahmad bin Zayn al-Habshi, Imam Haddad had a upstairs in his home. He had the most simplest basic home that you can ever imagine. I'm not going to get into the details because time is tight. And alhamdulillah, the echo is gone. Right? And there was a staircase going up to his home with a platform in the middle. So you have 4 steps and you have a platform, a resting. Then you have another 4 steps or 5 steps and you reach the first floor in Imam Haddad's house. The floor is very low. If you stand in his house, you'd almost reach the ceiling of the first floor. That's how small things are, right? And on that platform, Imam Haddad was ill and weak for a good number of years towards the end of his life. And because of his weakness, he couldn't climb the entire staircase in one go. So he would climb 4 or 5 steps to the resting and he would sit down and rest. And then he would stand up again and climb 4 or 5 steps until he reaches the first floor in his house. Habib Ahmad bin Zayn read over 100 books to Imam Haddad while Imam Haddad rested, in the middle of his staircase. On the platform, while moving up and coming downstairs. So when coming up, he would rest and he would read to him. And when coming down, he would rest and Habib Ahmad would read to him. And they say the number of books he read to him, forget about upstairs and forget about downstairs in the masjid, just on the platform between downstairs and upstairs, he read over 100 books. Wow. How many books have you and I studied or read? Right? So that's Habib Ahmad bin Zayn al-Habshi. Myself and Sidi Abdul Ghafoor and others visited his maqam in Tarim a few years ago. Allah allow all of us to go visit together. So he starts off his book with an introduction and a prayer. The prayer he makes over here is very important when he says that these are some masail stated in an abridged fashion, masail mukhtasara, taken from the works of Imam al-Ghazali. And Imam al-Ghazali was another great person in this ummah that we can speak about on another occasion, inshallah ta'ala. And he said that man arafaha wa amila biha, whoever studies this book and thereafter acts upon this book, نرجو له من الله أن يكون من أهل العلم ظاهرا وباطنا. Our prayer for him is that the person that studies this book and then he acts upon it, that he becomes from the people of knowledge inwardly and outwardly. Many of the mashayikh continue teaching this book and studying this book just so that the dua of Habib Ahmad bin Zayd could apply to him. And that's one of our intentions when we start the reading of the Essentials of Islam, Risala al-Jami'ah, that Allah makes us from the people of knowledge inwardly and outwardly. Ameen ya Rabbil Alameen. He then starts with the Arkan of Islam. And he said that the Arkan of Islam are 5. So we covered the Arkan of Deen, which were 3. And now he moves over to the Arkan of Islam. And how many are they? There are 5. We covered them last week. Shahadatu an la ilaha illallah. To believe with your heart and to profess to humanity that there is no one truly worthy of worship in all of existence other than Allah. The meaning of Ashhadu an la ilaha illallah is to believe in your heart and to profess to humanity that in all of existence there is no one that is truly worthy of worship other than Allah. Wa anna Muhammadan Rasulullah. Meaning, I believe in my heart and I profess to humanity that Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wasallam is the messenger of Allah, who Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala sent to all of creation with the true religion of Islam. So that's Ashhadu an la ilaha illallah wa ashhadu anna Muhammadan Rasulullah. Then the meanings of la ilaha illallah and Muhammadur Rasulullah and the commentary just on the testimony of faith alone. One of the most beautiful works, just a commentary, Shaykh Abdullah Sirajuddin has an entire risala. We have it at our bookshop, where he speaks about the kalima la ilaha illallah and the meanings of the kalima la ilaha illallah, Muhammadur Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. But we need to cover ground. We have 8 weeks to complete Salah. Our author, before he reaches Salah, he speaks about the basis of our Iman and faith, which is a very important reminder for all of us. Wa iqamu salah. The second pillar of Islam is to make iqama of salah. And iqama of salah doesn't just mean to pray salah. The meaning of iqama is to be persistent and regular without fail in praying your 5 times daily. That's iqama salah. If I'm not regular and persistent in praying my 5 times daily prayer, then I haven't truly fulfilled the second pillar of Islam, which is iqam salah. Wa ita'u zakah. And of course, salah, linguistically, it means prayer. And according to the jurists and the fuqaha and our fiqh, salah is statements that we pronounce and actions that we do that starts with Allahu Akbar and ends with Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah. And a person who leaves out salah is considered to be a sinner of the highest degree. Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam said the difference between the believer and the non-believer is prayer, salah. Iqam salah. Wa ita'u zakah, giving your zakah, paying your zakah. Zakah is an obligatory tax that a Muslim has to pay on his wealth. When his wealth reaches a certain amount, that will be discussed later on in this course, and when a year passes by on that minimum, so it's your wealth needs to reach a minimal taxable amount, and a year needs to pass by on that wealth, and then zakah becomes compulsory. And more details will be discussed at the later stage. وَإِيتَاءُ الزَّكَاةِ, paying your zakah is the third pillar of Islam. وَصَوْمُ Ramadan, fasting the month of Ramadan. And we are less than 2 months away from the month of Ramadan. May Allah bless us in Rajab and allow us to reach Ramadan. And Shar'an, according to our Islamic law, the fasting of the month of Ramadan means to abstain from all things which nullifies the fast from Fajr until Maghrib with a specific intention. وَحَجُّ الْبَيْتِ, and then he said to perform the Hajj. Man istata'a, for those who are by the means. Those who are by the means. And the details of the Hajj will also be discussed at the later stage. By the means in today's context primarily means if you're financially by the means to perform the Hajj. And with the Hajj, similarly, the Umrah is also compulsory. So a person, the Umrah may be compulsory on someone, even though Hajj is not necessarily compulsory on someone. If a person has an excess in his wealth, if Hajj is 50,000 and he has an excess of 50,000, Hajj becomes compulsory. But if he doesn't have 50,000, but he has 25,000, which is enough to perform Umrah, then Umrah becomes compulsory. So many a person, they pass away leaving this world thinking that Hajj wasn't compulsory upon me, and therefore from my estate I don't need to send someone, and the family is very negligent thereof about performing a Badal Hajj of a parent to grandparent that never performed the Hajj. Or sometimes children are eager to send someone to perform the Badal Hajj, to perform the Hajj on behalf of the deceased, but we're very negligent. Sometimes the Hajj may not have been compulsory upon a parent or grandparent, but the Umrah was the lesser pilgrimage. And very rarely do you hear of anyone sending somebody to go perform a Badal Umrah. Someone to go and perform a Umrah on behalf of another, but details of that will come later. And then he said with sincerity, to do all of these things with sincerity. And he said whoever does not do these things with sincerity is guilty of a form or type of hypocrisy. No. And whoever does not truly believe in these 5 pillars from his heart, that this is legislation that has come from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, cannot be a Muslim. So that is Islam. I wanted to go quickly through that because what I really want to cover today, for the benefit of all of us, born Muslims, revision, but also for those, especially our brothers and sisters that have joined us online, some new Muslims and some people that are perhaps interested in Islam, to speak about Iman. What does it mean? What does Iman mean? What is the foundation of Iman? So Habib Ahmad, he doesn't just mention the pillars of Iman, but he gives you a brief synopsis of what it means. This is a brief Aqidah. The Aqidah of a believer in a few lines. So if we sit here this evening and cover this brief synopsis of Iman, then we all leave here with the essential Aqidah that every Muslim must have. Tamam. So he said, rahimahullah ta'ala, that the foundation of Iman, the reality of Iman, is that you believe in your heart without hesitation, without any doubt, that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala exists. That Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala exists. That God is there. And this is one of the major challenges of our time. People don't believe Allah exists. Despite the fact that everything around us points to the existence of Allah, there are people that their hearts don't believe Allah exists. And it's amazing, because the more one ponders and reflects regarding the existence of Allah, the more you become convinced that Allah exists. There's just so much science. I was watching a video on social media yesterday of a person that that he takes water samples from lakes and all over, and he has a very strong microscope. So he zooms in with his microscope, micro bodies, organisms, right? And you find things that hundreds of organisms that you cannot see with the physical eye, but they exist. Some of them you can see their hearts beating, right? You can see their heart beating. And I thought to myself, how does a scientist not see Allah? How does he not see Allah? Right? Subhanallah. But then I also pondered and reflected. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said about them that Khatam Allahu ala qulubihim. Allah placed a seal over their hearts. Wa ala sam'ihim, and over the ears. Wa ala absarihim, and over the eyes. So they have eyes, but they can't see Allah. They have ears, they can't hear about the existence of Allah. They have hearts, but their hearts cannot see Allah because it's been sealed. And that's when a person constantly over and over distances himself from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Because everything clearly points out to the existence of Allah. And these are not topics that we can shy away from any longer. Within our communities, our scholars, the seniors, if a child raises the question regarding the existence of Allah, I cannot tell him you must just believe. Islam is not a religion. This is not somebody raises within another faith issue such as the Trinity, which cannot be explained logically or scientifically. And the response from the leadership is you must just believe. Islam is not a religion where we say you must just believe. Islam is a religion that welcomes debate, welcomes discussion. Right? There's not the mother can't reprimand the child and the father can't say, just go to the masjid to listen and don't ask these questions now. And one of the most beneficial works that I've seen that is really good for our children, that addresses so many of the criticism raised by atheists with regards to the existence of God, of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, is a book that is titled I Believe in Allah. It is written by some Turkish author. He sold out on the book. I speak about it, not we need to buy some more copies in. No, sorry, the title is I Wonder About Allah. And in a beautiful, simple way, the author covers, and Turkey went through that. Communism was widespread in Turkey. And, Ataturk and that regime basically got rid of religion, so they suffered. But they remained steadfast. They addressed all the challenges and the pseudo objections that atheists generally raised. And Iman prevailed. So they were in a good space to write about this. And I don't want to labor the topic any further. But i'tiqad or Iman is to believe with the heart without an atom of doubt that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is there. And Allah mawjood. And then Allah ta'ala wahid, that He is one and He subhanahu wa ta'ala is alone. He cannot be more than one. There cannot be more than one God. وَلَمْ يَكُنْ لَهُ شَرِيكٌ فِي الْمُلْكِ. And the simple reasoning was that if there was another God with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, what if two gods willed something different? One God willed something different from the will of another God. That's chaos. And therefore, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said in the Quran, لَوْ كَانَ فِيهِمَا آلِهَةٌ إِلَّا اللَّهِ. If there was another deity, God that existed other than Allah, لَفَسَدَتَا. Then the lands and the earth will cease to exist. They cannot, logically, you cannot have more than one God. There can only be one creator. وَأَنَّهُ تَعَالَى وَاحِدٌ. He is alone, independent. All of creation is in need of Him, and He is not in need of anyone. He is not in need of His prophets. He is not in need of His messengers. He is not in need of angels. He is not in need of anyone. Everything is dependent on Him. He exists without time. He exists without space. He is the creator of time and the creator of space. It cannot be contained. If you want to create a throne that is 1,000,000 times the size of this universe, it can never contain Allah. Therefore, Rasul Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam said, nothing can contain Allah besides the heart of a believer. Subhanallah. La sharika lah, he has no partner. Wala mithla wala shibha. These three terms that are rather interesting. And he said that Allah has no mathil. A mathil means that there is no one or thing in existence that shares all the qualities of Allah. Then he said, wala shibhala. Shibhala means there is no existence, no one in all of existence that share even one of the qualities of Allah. Laysa kamithlihi shay. There is no one, nothing like him, subhanahu wa ta'ala. Wa huwa sami'ul basir. He is all hearing and he sees everything. The Prophet ﷺ told us he hears the footsteps. He sees a black ant walking on a black rock in the middle of a jungle on a dark night when there's no moon. He hears the footsteps. وَمَا تَسْقُطُ مِنْ وَرَقَةٍ إِلَّا يَعْلَمُهَا. No leaf falls from a tree, say that Allah is away. Everyone is in need of Allah. And Allah is not in need of anyone. He's not in need of us. But He loves us. He created us. He favors us. And then He made us from the ummah of the best and the most beloved of all creation to Him. So how kind is Allah? لَيْسَ كَمِثْلِهِ شَيْءٌ وَهُوَ السَّمِيعُ الْبَصِيرُ. خَلَقَ السَّمَاوَاتِ. Allah created the heavens and the earth. وَخَلَقَ الْمَوْتَ وَالْحَيَاةَ. He created life and death. Death means when the ruh leaves the body. And hayat, life, when Allah placed the soul in our bodies. When we were 4 months old in the wombs of our mother, Allah sent our souls that Allah already created before the creation of this land. The alam al-arwah Allah created, and therefore we are technically all the same age. That's just our physical bodies that are. It doesn't mean that the young shouldn't respect the elderly, and the elderly shouldn't show mercy to the young, but the reality is that our souls are all created at the same time by Allah. Of course, the first soul that was created was the soul of Sayyidina Muhammad. Before Nabi Adam, the Prophet was created. And when Allah created all souls, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gathered all souls, and Allah proclaimed to them, Alastu bi Rabbikum, am I not your Lord? And each and every soul responded, and that was the alam al-arwah, the world of souls. Soul responded saying, Bala, indeed you are Lord. But the first soul to respond of the billions of souls that Allah created was the soul of Sayyidina Muhammad. Bala, indeed you are Lord. And then when the time came for our existence to be born in this world, 4 months old in the wombs of our mothers, our souls placed within our bodies, that is life. And when Allah removes, that's death. But it's something which is relative. Because if the soul was alive before that, then it's just a stage of life, but not life itself. And when the soul leaves the body, it's not a real death. It's just death in relation to this body, not the soul. The soul continues living. There's no end for the soul. Because the soul will dwell forever in paradise or forever in Jahannam. May Allah make us from the people of paradise. He created good health, siha. He created illness. And there's much to be said about sickness and health. We, in a time where we excited on sickness and health. Allah created sicknesses and Allah created health. Allah is the one that causes someone to take ill. And Allah is the one that gives cure. Allah created all of existence. He created all of, and He decreed their sustenance. Our sustenance has been decreed. 4 months old in the womb of our mother, when our souls were placed in our bodies, Allah sent angels. And those angels then had a discussion of what our sustenance will be till the last grain of rice. One of our teachers extent that if one of us were to die, and the tukamani is, what do you call it, tukamani in English? Is the tukamani an undertaker? The tukamani is the man that comes to wash your body when you die to make your ghusl. Yani the tukamani. You know, they asked this one person to make tafsir of Surah Fatiha. They told him, can you make tafsir of Surah Fatiha for us? In Arabic. So he said, yeah. So he said, Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen. He said, يعني meaning, Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen. Ar-Rahim. Maliki Yawmiddin, meaning Maliki Yawmiddin. That was the extent of his tafsir. So I'm explaining tukamani by saying, tukamani. So he comes and worships. But it's one of the example in terms of sustenance. You'll die, you'll be laying on the cattle, right? And the tukamani will come to perform your mouth, and at the back of your throat you will see a grain of rice, and you will take out the grain of rice to that extent that was not written and recorded. What has been decreed has been decreed. ما أصابك لم يكن ليخطئك. But Allah has written is going to reach you, it's not going to pass you by. And Allah decreed how long you will live. لا تزيد ولا تنقص. That will not increase, neither will it decrease. ولا يحدث حادث. Nothing in all of existence happen without His decree, except that He has ordained. No leaf falls, no leaf reaches the ground, no leaf disintegrates, no ant eats, no bug bites, no mosquito takes some of your blood. Nothing in existence happens except that Allah has ordained it. Right? I mean, today we're still discovering new parts of the ocean. We're still discovering new places within the desert. We're still discovering. Allah is the one that decreed and ordained and willed, subhanahu wa ta'ala. How amazing is our Lord. May Allah allow us. The more we connect to Him, we will witness amazing things. He said, وَأَنَّهُ, Allah is alive. He knows whatever happens. What He desires comes into being. He is capable over everything. He speaks, and His word, His word is the Quran. He hears everything. He sees everything. These discussions, normally we have to, the sifat of Allah's qualities of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala requires detailed discussion, but we're not able to get into too much detail. He knows that which is hidden within the chests. He knows what is hidden, and He knows that which is beyond that which is hidden. He is the creator of everything. He is alone, the compeller. And then He sent to us Sayyidina Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. Muhammad, Sayyidina means our master, Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. And the Sayyid, there are several meanings for the word Sayyid. One of those meanings is a person whom people have identified as a leader. Now, our master Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and Muhammad was his most virtuous name. Otherwise, Rasul sallallahu alaihi wasallam had 99 names. His names that they have Ahmad, and Muhammad means the one who is excessively praised. I find it strange when people take issue and say, why do you praise the Prophet so much? After Allah named him the one who is excessively praised. Right? Subhanallah. And his grandfather Abdul Muttalib gave him that name. On the 7th day after he was born. And that was because his father was not alive. So his grandfather took care of him, and his grandfather gave him the name. And when Abdul Muttalib was asked, why did you name him Muhammad? He responded by saying that, and none of your forefathers was named Muhammad. You should share this. One of our senior, Shaykh Ibrahim, encourages always to name your children after parents and grandparents. Right? And that notion is not something of today. Yeah, Abdul Muttalib was asked, why did you name your grandchild Muhammad when none of your forefathers was named Muhammad? You're supposed to, in other words, name. So he said, I've named him Muhammad because I desire that he will be praised in the lands and in the heavens. And Allah made his desire reality. But also his mother was told, وَسَمِّهِ إِذَا وَضَعْتِهِ مُحَمَّدًا فَإِنَّهُ سَتُحْمَدُ عُقْبَى, that name the child Muhammad when he is born. Now, the Prophet ﷺ was born in Mecca, the year of the elephants, in the month of Rabi al-Awwal, on a Monday, and the 12th of Rabi al-Awwal, according to the majority. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala sent him as a prophet when revelation came to him on a Monday as well. And that's when he reached 40 years of age, and he performed the hijrah from Mecca to Medina al-Munawwara, and another name of Medina is Taiba, and prior to that it was known as Yathrib. No. And he sallallahu alayhi wasallam, similarly, the hijrah was also performed on a Monday, and he sallallahu alayhi wasallam eventually passed away on a Monday in Medina al-Munawwara, and his age at that time was 63 years of age, and he was buried in Medina al-Munawwara. And Allah said, he said that Allah sent, our Iman is to believe that Allah sent to us our Master Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wasallam, who was his slave. And that was the greatest quality that the Prophet sallallahu alayhi wasallam had. It was the quality description that he took the most pride in. That I am the slave of Allah. Ubudiyya, servitude. Lowering yourself before. Worshipping Allah. And because of that quality of being a slave, he stood so long in prayer that his feet would become swollen. حَتَّى تَوَرَّمَتْ قَدَمًا. And some narrations said his feet became so swollen at times that it began bleeding. And when his wife Aisha radiallahu ta'ala said to him that, why do you exert yourself so much when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has promised you that all your sins are forgiven? And he did not sin, sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. The Prophet was protected from sin, he was infallible. He responded by saying, should I not be a thankful slave? أَفَلَا أَكُونُ عَبْدًا شَكُورًا. So he was an abd. وَرَسُولَهُ, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala sent Sayyidina Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, who was his slave and his messenger. One of the things that we need to believe in is to believe in Allah and His Prophet sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, but also to believe in all prophets. The unique thing about Islam is that we accept all of the prophets of Allah, and we believe in all of the prophets of Allah. And therefore, if what makes you Christian is the following of Nabi Isa, then every Muslim is, in that sense, a Christian because we follow Nabi Isa. And if what makes you a Jew is to follow Nabi Musa alayhi salatu wasalam, then in that sense, every Muslim can be considered Jewish in that he follows and attaches himself to Nabi Musa alayhi salatu wasalam. Except that the final prophet is Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wasallam. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said, Anbiya, we must believe that Allah sent prophets. We need to believe in all Anbiya in a general sense, but 25 of them, we need to believe in them specifically. We need to know the details of them. And for the very least, we need to know their names. 25 prophets, part of my Iman. So this is actually good because there was approximately 124,000 prophets that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala sent. They all met and gathered with Rasul sallallahu alayhi wa sallam in Masjid al-Aqsa on the night of Isra and Mi'raj. And therefore, it's important to clarify that Masjid al-Aqsa is not the Masjid Qibali which we find in the front of the Masjid. Like some reports they try to create the impression that the masjid in the front of the courtyard, that is the masjid. And then they point to the dome of the rock saying, that is not the Masjid al-Aqsa, which is a deception. Because Masjid al-Aqsa is the entire space, including the dome of the rock and Masjid Qibla. In the time of the Prophet ﷺ, there was no Masjid Qibla. He said, when Umar came there was no masjid. The entire space was known as Masjid al-Aqsa. And the Masjid al-Aqsa is 144,000 square meters. And when the Prophet led them in prayer, the Anbiya took up 124,000 square meters. And the remaining 20,000 square meters were filled by angels. So he Sallallahu led Salah, the entire Masjid al-Aqsa was filled, 124,000 prophets, 20,000 angels. Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, and he led them. But of those 124,000, in detail, we should know the names of 25. And therefore, I can remember at Habibia we were made to memorize the names of the 25 prophets. We all went to Habibia. I just see two hands. And we read it in a qasida. Does anybody know it? No, the qasida is part of a poem by Sidi Al-Alama Ahmad Al-Marzuki. And he wrote a very important poem in Aqidah titled Aqidatul Awam. La ilaha illallah. I don't have so nice voice to read the qasida, but I'll read the first line. It may ring a bell to some of you. It reads, تفصيل 25 عزيم كل مكلف فحقق واغتنم. Does it ring a bell? He used to play on our radio as well. And then he brings the names. Adam, Idris, Nuh, Hud, Salih, Ibrahim. Who's counting? Rida count. Adam, Idris, Nuh, Hud, Salih, Ibrahim, Lut, Ismail, Ishaq, Yaqub, Yusuf, Ayyub, Shu'aib, Harun, Musa, Ilyasa, Dhul-Kifl, Dawood, Sulaiman, Ilyas, Yunus, Zakaria, Yahya, Isa, and Taha, sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. Those are the 25 prophets that you must know them by name. Right? Adam, Idris, Nuh, Hud, Salih. Nabi Ibrahim, Nabi Lut, Nabi Ismail, Nabi Ishaq, Nabi Yaqub, Nabi Yusuf, Nabi Ayyub, Nabi Shu'aib, Nabi Musa, Nabi Harun, Nabi Ilyasa, Nabi Dawood, Nabi Sulaiman, Nabi Ilyas, Nabi Yunus, Nabi Zakaria, Nabi Yahya, Nabi Dhul-Kifl, Nabi Isa, and Sayyidina Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. So to believe in all of the Anbiya, and all of the messages. And then he continued with his brief aqidah saying, إِلَى جَمِيعِ الْخَلْقِ. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala sent Rasul sallallahu alayhi wa sallam to all of creation. To call them to Allah. To show them a perfect way of life. You must believe that the Prophet came to show us the perfect way of life. The minute I stray from his way of life, I'm straying away from perfection. Right? There's no one and no culture and no society and no system that can bring us any good if it contradicts the way of Sayyidina. His way is always preferred, is always better, and the welfare of humanity lies within his way. And every single problem that we find on the face of this world, it's a result of us abandoning the way of Sayyidina Muhammad. If there's poverty, because we left the way of Rasulullah. If there's injustices, we left the way of Rasulullah. If there's oppression, because we left the way of Rasulullah. If there's stealing, if there's crime, because we left the way of Rasulullah. In my home, if there's problems, because we left the way of Rasulullah. If there's marital discord, either the husband left the way or the wife left the way, or both of them left the way of Rasulullah. If there's problems between parents and children, because we left the way of Rasulullah. Whenever we turn away from the way of Sayyidina Muhammad, we're opening up a door for challenges and problems. My Iman states that I believe that the Prophet brought me the perfect way of life. And he was perfect. The way he interacted with his Sahaba, with his companions, with his spouses, his wives, his children, he was unblemished. No one could point a finger. Even the enemies of Islam, when they wanted to criticize him and say bad things about him, they had to fabricate things. They were, the Arabs were the best of thinkers. They used to have meetings where they applied it. In fact, one of the reasons why Arabs used to drink alcohol so much was because their minds would be so occupied and their thought would be so deep and so consistent that it became exhausting, and to get their minds to switch off, they used to drink. And with that deep thought, when they were plotting, how can we turn people away from Sayyidina Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, the only thing they could think of is that we need to fabricate something. We need to tell lies against him. Let's call him a soothsayer. Let's call him a magician. Let's call him a... They had to lie things, despite the intention, because there was nothing that they could point out that he did wrong. He never swore. He didn't speak aloud. He didn't oppress anyone. It was just beauty and beauty and beauty. And the more ill you acted towards it, the more beautiful it was. Last week we quoted the narration of Ali ibn Zayd ibn Jud'an. The more ignorant you act towards it, it only shines more with forbearance and wisdom and beauty. Subhanallah. Return to the way of Rasulullah. We need to feel within our hearts honor that we are from this ummah. Our children must become connected to it. It will save their Iman. Once a heart loves Rasulullah, then the idea of abandoning, believing, adopting atheism, impossible for a heart that loves Rasulullah. Now, and Allah assisted His Prophet ﷺ with miracles, I believe that's not. Miracles is that He ﷺ on one occasion, He pointed to the moon, and when He pointed to the moon split in half. اقتربت الساعة وانشق القمر. That happened. I need to accept and believe the miracles of Rasul. So, and His miracles were many. Al-Imam al-Bayhaqi has a book called Dalail al-Nubuwwah, which is like 12 volumes just discussing his miracles. Right? But the greatest of miracles was the Quran. The greatest of miracles that Rasulullah wrote the Quran. To believe the Iman that we are discussing today, as evening's dars is all about a brief aqidah. Whatever we're speaking about here are things that are non-negotiable in terms of believing. We must believe it in our hearts that He ﷺ was truthful in whatever He uttered. Whatever He uttered, in fact, it was meaning that came from Allah. وَمَا يَنْتِقُ عَنِ الْهَوَىٰ إِنْ هُوَ إِلَّا وَحْيٌ يُوحَىٰ. So we believe in the Sirat, the bridge that crosses over the fire of Jahannam, and that it is thinner than a strand of hair and sharper than a blade, and that some people will cross that bridge with the speed of lightning, and some will cross it with the speed of wind, and others will cross that bridge with the speed of a stallion, and others will cross it with the speed of a donkey, and some will run, and some will walk, and some will crawl, and thousands and thousands and thousands will fall into the fire of Jahannam. And Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he told us in Sahih Muslim that on this bridge that there are hooks the sizes of mountains that are swaying from right to left. You really have to worry about alternatives from right to left. With every swing of those hooks, Rasul sallallahu alaihi wasallam said, thousands of people will be thrown into the fire. And he told us some people will be on that bridge, they will be crawling and hanging on for their lives. And when they find themselves in that state, as Ibn Sakir transmits to the sound chain of transmission in his Tariq, when he finds himself in that state, The salawat he used to send, the salutations he used to send upon Rasul sallallahu alayhi wa sallam would come to him and make him firm and cause him to cross with the speed of light. And there'll be a group of people that cross over with Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. And if you meet the Prophet sallallahu alayhi wa sallam by that bridge, khalas. That should be our objective, to reach there with him. The Prophet said, you'll find me at 5 places on the day of judgment. Right? 3 of the famous places you'll find Rasulullah, either you'll find me giving water to my ummah to drink, and some will drink from his pond as well, from his hands, or he said, you'll find me by the mawazin, the scales, where my ummah's deeds are being weighed. And if you get the Prophet where your deeds are being weighed, you're safe. Because he will make sure that your good deeds are there. Or you'll get me by the bridge where people are crossing over. And if you get him there, you'll be safe. On that day, Rasulullah will pray and make intercession for hundreds of thousands of people. To believe in the mizan, that deeds will be weighed. To believe in the pond of Rasul sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, the name of the pond is Al-Kawthar. It's called Al-Kawthar because Allah gave Rasul sallallahu alayhi wa sallam a river in Jannah, and the name of that river is Kawthar. And the Prophet told us that river is whiter than any milk you have seen and sweeter than any honey you have tasted. And that river that runs in Jannah and it pours over into the well of the Prophet sallallahu alayhi wa sallam on the plains where we will be resurrected. And that's his pond. And some of the scholars say that his pond is actually on the other side of the bridge. And if you drink from his pond, you'll never ever experience any thirst. Lam yadma' ba'dahu abada. So everything he told us, sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, part of my aqeedah is that I need to believe what he told us about the unseen and the barzakh. And we need to believe about the questioning of the grave. The angels will come to us when I am placed in my grave. And they are going to ask us, Man Rabbuk, who is your Lord? Wa man Nabiyyuk, who is your Prophet? Wa ma Deenuk, what is your deen? And when we find ourselves, I won't be able to answer what I wish to answer. My tongue will speak based on how I lived my life. If I loved Allah is my Lord, my tongue will say, Allahu Rabbi. If I loved the life of Rasul sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, my tongue will say that Nabi Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa sallam is my prophet. But if I loved the life of some pop star, some football player, if my role model was anyone other than Rasul sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, then that's exactly what my tongue will say. What's happening? That's what my tongue will say. My tongue is not going to say that the Prophet is my prophet. These are realities, haqa'iq. Our children must hear about this. It needs to be so overwhelming that they should be thinking about it. They should be worried about it. They should take decisions in terms of their career based on it. What am I going to say when they ask me in my grave, Man Nabiyyuk, who is your prophet? Now, in the Quran, on the day of judgment, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala told us that يَقُولُ الظَّالِمُ يَا لَيْتَنِي اتَّخَذْتُ مَعَ الرَّسُولِ سَبِيلًا. How I wish I adopted the way of the Messenger sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. يَوْمَ يَعُدُّ الظَّالِمُ عَلَى يَدِهِ. The Prophet said a person, his state of worrying if the Prophet was not his role model, a person worries, bites his nails. The person will have so much worry, he'll bite his nails until he eats his fingers away, then he will eat his hand away, and he will eat his arm away. Out of worry and concern. Ya laytani, how I wish I adopted the way of Sayyidina Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. Ya laytani ittakhadhtu ma'a rasuli sabila. Ya waylata lam attakhid fulanan khalila. How I wish I didn't follow the way of that rock star, that pop star, that idol. that soccer player, that rugby player, people that we are so impressed with today, they're not going to make us from the successful ones when we're in our graves. Subhanallah. To believe that there is punishment in the grave. The Prophet ﷺ, he told us that if I lived a bad life, if I did not obey Allah and His Rasul, that a person will be punished. And from the punishment in the grave, the Prophet said that the grave will shrink and close up on a person. It will close up. And the Prophet said until the rib cage of the one side crushes into the rib cage of the other. And that there will be a serpent. And that serpent's venom will be so poisonous that if a drop of his venom was to fall on the lands, nothing will ever grow. No. And he will bite the person in his grave for as long as he is in the person. These are part and aspects of our Iman. The fact that there's punishment in the grave is something that we believe and as part of our Aqeedah and cannot be denied. And similarly, the grave is also a place of reward and luxury and comfort. Rasul sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, he told us that the grave is either a garden of paradise or a pit of the fire of Jannah. Part of your Iman is to believe in the Quran. But not only the Quran, to believe in all books and scriptures that was revealed by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Now, you have to believe in all scriptures in general, but these 4 scriptures that you need to believe in detail, such that you need to know the names of those scriptures. What are the 4 scriptures you need to know the names of them, which is part of your Iman? The Torah, Zabur, Injil, and the Quran. Ahsantum. Everyone knew that one. When I asked about the Anbiya, so I didn't get so much responses. And then you need to believe in who? You need to believe in Allah's angels. So, mujmalan, in brief, I need to believe in all the angels of Allah. First of all, who are the angels? They are bodies made out of light. Allah created them from nur, from light. They do not eat, they do not drink, they do not sleep, they do not disobey Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. They only do as they were commanded. Some of them, since the day Allah created them, has been in sajda. Hundreds of years, thousands of years, tens of thousands of years. Right? Some of them from the day Allah created them is in ruku. Some of them are reciting Quran non-stop, glorifying Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, some reciting Alhamdulillah. So we believe in all the angels of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And nobody knows the number of angels other than Allah. وَمَا يَعْلَمُ جُنُودَ رَبِّكَ إِلَّا هُ. However, there is 10 angels whom we need to believe in with tafsir, with detail, and the bare minimum is we should know their names. Where's the Buddhas that came with the names of the scriptures? Jibreel. Jibreel was entrusted with wahi revelation. He is the archangel Gabriel that came to all prophets. Now, who else? Mikael, Uncle Ali said. Mikael has a responsibility of providing sustenance to humanity and sending rains. Now, and then Israfil, what does he do? He's the one that will blow the trumpet, indicating the day of judgment. Malakul Maut has a name, brother. Malakul Maut is not the name. Malakul Maut just means angel of death. Israel, he is entrusted with souls of people when they leave this world. Now, then these two comes together. Munkar and Nakir, they are the angels that will question us in our graves. Allah make us successful. Then there's another two that comes together. They sit on our shoulders. and record our deeds. One record our good deeds, one record our bad deeds. Raqib and Atid. Raqibun Atid. The one sits on my right, he records my good deeds. The other sits on my left and records my Atid. And then there's a gatekeeper or a doorkeeper of the fire of Jahannam and a gate or doorkeeper of Jannah. Who's the gatekeeper or doorkeeper of Jahannam? No. Malik. And the doorkeeper of Jannah? Ridwan. Ridwan will be seated when Rasul sallallahu alayhi wa sallam arrives at the doors of Jannah with his ummah. See this as if it's a reality because it's going to happen. It's so much going to happen, it's as if it already happened. The Prophet will arrive at the doors of Jannah. And the Prophet said that I will knock on the doors of Jannah. And Ridwan will be seated on the other side, will ask, Man bil bab, who's at the door? And the reality is that, right, Ridwan must know who it is, but he's fulfilling the decree of Allah and the hadith of Rasul sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So he will ask, who's at the door? And Rasul sallallahu alaihi wasallam will respond, it is Muhammad and Muhammad's ummah. And then Ridwan will stand up. And he will say, I was commanded by Allah not to stand up and not to open up the doors of Jannah until Muhammad and the Ummah of Muhammad arrives. Allah make us with the Prophet when he knocks on the doors of Jannah. Maybe hear that conversation between Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam and Ridwan. Subhanallah. And then to believe in Jannah, that it is the truth. And it's a place of luxury and reward. And that it has 7 levels, and the highest of its levels is Jannatul Firdaus. And within Al-Firdaus, the highest level of Firdaus is Adan. And within Adan, the highest level is Khuld. And within Khuld, the highest level is Na'im. And within Na'im, the highest level is Ma'wa. And within Ma'wa, the highest level is Darus Salam. And within Darus Salam, the highest level is the level of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, Darul Jalal. Where the Prophet sallallahu will stay with his wives. Subhanallah. And to believe that the fire is the truth. And that the fire has an inhale and exhale. And the Prophet sallallahu told us that the heat that we find in this world is from the exhale of the fire of Jannah. And it's a place that Allah has prepared for punishment. And the lightest form of punishment, the Prophet said in Sahih Muslim, is a man will be given a pair of slippers to wear. When he steps into that slippers, it will be so hot that his brains will boil. And he said that if the fire of Jahannam was to strike the face of one of us for a split second, what will happen is that our faces will melt such that our upper lip will reach the center of our heads, and our lower lips will melt such that it reaches our knees. Allah protect us from Jahannam. But on the day of Jannah, Qiyamah, Jahannam will come looking to grab people, and Jahannam will be kept on chains by 70,000 angels. In Sahih Hadith, 70,000 angels will keep Jahannam. And Jahannam will want to come to take the people. And the Prophet also will stand up and go and address Jahannam. And alone will feed Jahannam. Allah protect us from his punishment. The more you read about the days of judgment, the more you realize that our greatest hope lies in the intercession of Sayyidina Muhammad. Allah grant us his intercession. And he said that whoever visits my grave, my intercession becomes compulsory. So those of us who visited Medina, maybe attain the intercession of Rasulullah. And those who have not visited, may Allah facilitate and make it possible for them to visit, so they can also attain the intercession of Rasulullah. And that's his discussion on Aqidah in brief. And in next week's dars, we start with the compulsory acts of wudu. La ilaha illallah Muhammad Rasulullah. Are there any questions before we come? Oh, we way over that. Subhanallah. The events of the Day of Judgment, we must start speaking more about. We need to hear more about it. Because when we don't speak about it, and a generation stops hearing the realities of this day, and then one day when the young man is grown up and he never heard about it all his life, he finds the discussion strange. How can Jahannam be held back with chains? How this, how that? Our children must hear this. If we're concerned about the Iman, we need to hear this over and over. Do you want to see there's any online from Sidi Masood? No. If anyone has a question, I'm going to give like just 5 minutes because we're like very much over time. I never realized we're so much over time. Aisha was what time? 1 minute past 9. Well, we 20 minutes already, more than 20 minutes. Okay, so here's a question. The first question I have over here is from our online students. When the Iqamah is being recited, at what point should we get up to form the song? A very valuable question. I'm very happy that the question was asked. I didn't know also the question going to be asked. So, in our madhab, the Shafi'i school, the view is that you only stand up for salah once the Iqamah is done. Once the muqim ends the Iqamah, قامت الصلاة قامت الصلاة الله أكبر الله أكبر لا إله إلا الله. Now you only stand up for prayer. Of course, in order for that to successfully work, everyone needs to be sitting in their rows. So when you stand up, the salah can start. The problem we have is, and this is a problem we have with all our masjids in the Western Cape, is that our communities come to the masjid, but they don't sit filling the rows from the front. You never ever see the front row being full before the salah starts, which is a problem. In an ideal Muslim community, when you come into the masjid, you already start filling the rows from the front. So that when you Iqamah goes, fulfill the Sunnah as best as possible, and you only stand up once the muqim, the person who calls the Iqamah, concludes the Iqamah. That's when you stand up. The Imam and everyone else. Then there's another view that exists. It's a weaker view that says when the muqim reaches, قَدْ قَامَتِ الصَّلَاةِ قَدْ قَامَتِ الصَّلَاةِ, you can stand. And there's a view that I think belongs to the Hanbali or Maliki school, I'll have to double check, that says you can stand up for the salah already before the muqim starts the Iqamah. But the default is, and really we should try to implement this as best as possible, the person calling the Iqamah doesn't stand up and wait for people to form the safs. That's wrong. He needs to call the Iqamah without anyone standing up. And everyone should ideally be in their rows already, so that when he's done with the Iqamah, they can just stand up for salah. So asking the question, when do you stand up? That's when you're supposed to be standing up. Can you pay a compensation for missed salah, as you pay a compensation, fitra and fidya, when you miss a fast? So of course, in terms of the way the question is structured, fitra is not something you pay up as a compensation. Fitra is a zakah, a charity that becomes obligatory upon us in the month of Ramadan, the morning of Eid, right? Rather, the eve of Eid, when Ramadan ends. And fidya, on the other hand, is what you pay if you missed a fast, but only for the person who is perpetually ill or old and will never find an opportunity to actually pay in that fast, like the elderly and the terminally ill. they will pay a fidya. The other persons who pay a fidya is a person that missed a fast and then on account of negligence does not pay that fast in until a new Ramadan enters. That person is to pay fidya, which is a compensation for your negligence in the last case that I mentioned, in terms of the ill and in terms of the elderly who cannot fast any longer because of age. They pay a fidya to make up for those days that they have missed. For salah, there is nothing that you can pay. If you miss a salah, you must pay in the salah. Right? You must 100 salahs, you must pay in 100 salahs. You must salahs for 5 years, you need to pay in salah for 5 years. You create a program, you create a system, and many people, what they do is, if they miss salah for 5 years, then the intention is to make up for those missed salahs over a period of 5 years. So whenever they pray Fajr, they pray a second Fajr. When they pray Dhuhr, they pray a second Dhuhr. And the third and the fourth, second Asr, a second Maghrib, a second Isha. And they do that for 5 years and they make up for the Salah that they missed for a period of 5 years. But a Salah never falls away, but always been an obligation for you to make it. Is there any question from the floor? Take one and then we conclude. Yes, go. Uncle, khushu, yes? Okay. Tamam. So khushu means to be settled and connected to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala before Allah in your prayer. You know, to be present with heart is from the meanings of khushu. There's another term that I think Uncle may be referring to, which is tuma'nina. Reaching a state of tuma'nina means that in a position such as your ruku and your sajda, your bowing and your prostration, and sitting between prostrations and so forth and so on, you need to attain a quality that is called tuma'nina. Tuma'nina means that your limbs, for the very least, have to come to rest. So if I go into my ruku, then some listed as a rukn of salah, some listed as a shart of the ruku. For my ruku, my bowing to be valid, my limbs need to come to a rest. That's tuma'nina. Right? You can imagine it happening in your mind, in the position, then your limbs rest. In your sajda, your limbs rest. The duration it takes for your limbs to rest, they say, is for you to recite one time in your ruku, Subhana Rabbiyal Azim wa bihamdi. That's tuma'nina. You should have received or attained tuma'nina in that time. And Subhana Rabbiyal bihamdi my sajda, one should have allowed me to reach tuma'nina in my sajda. If I do not, in the Shafi'i school, my salah is not valid. A person prays salah without tuma'nina in front of Rasul sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And then when he completed his salah, the Prophet told him, "Kum, stand, fasalli, make salah, for you have not prayed." So he made salah again without coming to rest. The Prophet said, "Kum, fasalli, fa'innaka lam tusalli." Stand and pray, you did not pray. The Sahabi prayed again. The Sahaba were amazing. You know, if one of us prayed and I told you, like, repeat your salah, you want to know why? Why? What did I do wrong? A Sahabi, the Prophet said, pray, you did not pray. He just prayed, the Prophet didn't pray. In his mind, he didn't pray, he made salah. Second time, again, third time, again. And then the Prophet tells him that when you go into ruku, then you perform the ruku, you bow until you reach tuma'nina. And when you make sajda, you go into your sajda and remain in sajda until you reach tuma'nina. And so forth and so on, the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Is there one more question? Bismillah.
The question, very often now, if she's not wearing socks, when she's performing salah,
in the Shafi'i school, no. In the Hanafi school, yes. No. In the Hanafi school, there's not a requirement that the feet must be covered. In the Shafi'i school, it has to be covered. Many sisters have a tendency to adopt the Hanafi school when they wear sandals, and it's a bit challenging for them to wear socks all the time. And if a lady wishes to adopt a Hanafi school in that regard, then there's latitude for that. We don't see the madhab as four walls that keeps you in and you can never depart. So there's latitude for a lady to not wear socks outside of her home if she wishes to follow the Hanafi school. But when it comes to Salah, my advice generally to the sisters is, why do you want to make a Salah that may be valid in the Hanafi school and not valid in the Shafi school? When it's so simple for you to cover your feet, and then your Salah is valid in the Hanafi school and the Shafi school. That's your Salah. Do you want to take a chance when it comes to your Salah? No. So, I hope that answers the question. We very much over time. I'm very sorry. We won't end this late again. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala grant us to figure understanding. This evening's dars that spoke of our Aqidah, our belief, is a very important discussion. We almost rushed through, even though it took so much time, we very much rushed through it. The discussion was important. We must go home with that message. We have to ponder and reflect. That is what it means for us to be Muslim. That's what makes us different from everyone else. These core beliefs that we have within our heart. We need to speak more about it. Allah make our Iman strong. Allah make our Iman firm. These realities should become such, our conviction, yaqeen should become such. Like Sayyidina Ali radiallahu ta'ala anhu said, if I was to see Jannah with the eyes in my head, my conviction in the existence of Jannah will not increase, not one bit. I heard the Prophet speaking about it. My eyes can fool me, but the words of the Prophet cannot fool me. In another instance, he said that if the veils were to be lifted, my conviction won't be increased unto God. That's what conviction you must have in the words of Sayyidina Muhammad. Allah make us people of Iman, of the people of Yaqeen, and may these realities be in front of us in every decision that we take within our lives. آمين يا رب العالمين بهذه النوايا إيمانا وسلامنا صالحا سيدنا حكمون وإلى حضرة النبي محمد صلى الله عليه وسلم الفاتحة صراط الذين أنعمت عليهم سبحان ربك رب العزة عما يصفون وسلام على المرسلين والحمد لله رب العالمين. Because it's so late, we're going to call the adhan and we're going to pray Isha immediately after the adhan. Whoever wants to make the sunnahs before Isha, you can perform it after Salat of Isha. But we have delayed considerably. So we're going to call adhan, make Isha immediately, and we can pray our sunnahs after Isha, and those who need to leave can leave. Whoa.